So it's time to address the shift linkage and the parking brake linkage. This is the shift linkage, and it's typical motorcycle stuff. Once forward is first, do it again as second, do it again as third. Then you go back to second to first to neutral, and backwards is reverse. I guess theoretically I could extend the shaft. So if I extended it straight out, which is probably possible, it would be pretty tight. I'd have to bend it around, but it would be under the fender. So one, I would have to cut a big notch in the engine compartment to be able to get the engine compartment off. And two, I'd have to cut a big notch in the wheel well, in the fender, to have some linkage to be able to go up and down. Two, the linkage would be so long, it would probably go up and down 8 or 9 inches. So I don't want to do that. So I think what I'm going to try to do is have this linkage transferred to some linkage under the seat and have a short shifter vertically where forward would be forward and reverse would be reverse motion. And then I have a parking brake linkage behind this. So look through my junk pile and see what I got that I can work with. I kind of like this thing, but it's heavy as all get out. This is cast bronze and I don't even know what it's from. So the first thing I need to do is cut these arms off of this. This fits on the motor. No matter what I do, I'm going to have to extend it out, so these arms will be useless. And I will need this piece because it fits on to the transmission shaft that sticks out of the motor. This is a pulley that came off the riding mower. It's in fair shape. I'm going to trim it. I'm going to trim it up to use it as a bearing. So far, I've got a piece of pipe and I tacked it onto the original shift hub. And this is the inside of that little pulley with the bearing in it. I tacked a little piece of pipe between the two. And I have a brace here, and I got it clamped, and I have a temporary shifting knob. So before I throw my ugly welds on this thing and totally weld it, I want to make sure it works. Alright, let's weld it up. I'm going to use this for the shift handle. It's kind of heavy, but it's kind of cool. I'm going to cut it here and drill a hole and try to braze it onto the end of that galvanized pipe. I don't know how else to hold it on there. I welded the lever arm on the bottom of the shaft, and it's about 5 inches long. It's the same length as the foot pedals were. So I need 5 inches below the shaft up front, and I also need about 2.5 inches each way because that's how far the throw is. That gave me this location, which will be under the seat. It's high enough off the floor for the lever arm, and it is far enough back so the lever arm can come forward, and it feels good from inside the cart. I kind of sat in there and played with it, so I'm going to drill a big hole. This is my first pivot. It's just a nut reamed out to fit the shaft, and it's welded to a little piece of angle, and it'll have 2 bolts coming up through the seat, and laying them out will be kind of tricky, but I'll get it. And this will establish where the shaft is going to go. The one on the far end will be a little bit easier so I have better access to it. This is the arm for the shifter, and I reached under there and marked it where it goes, and I'm gonna I can't weld it because I have to assemble it in place, so I'm gonna drill it, and then after I put it under the seat I can put a bolt to it. Okay, another reamed out nut for a pivot. I slid it on the end, and I made these two little brackets and welded them, and they're bolted, one through the bottom and one through the thing, so it's pretty strong. Now what I'm going to do is take it back apart. All I have to do is take the nut out of that through bolted pivot. Slide this on there. This is from the riding mower. And it will stick out the hole in the back quite a few inches. And then I'm going to take this apart and put this one on this hole. And they will overlap 6 or 8 inches. And I'm going to weld them. And there should be no reason for any adjustment ever. But if I have to, I can get it all apart because this shaft will come off, and this shaft will come off if I take that bolt out and slide it out. So this is the front pivot, and this is how that little thing fits in there. It's pretty cool. It's secure and it can't fall off, so I like this. So I'm going to put the front back together with just the rod sticking out the hole, and we'll do the back separately. So the front shift lever is straight up and down, and the back shift lever is straight up and down. And the two rods are overlapped. I'm going to put a teeny little tack and try it out. Sometimes things just work out correctly. So today I'm going to work on hooking up the parking brake or the backup brake, and this is it, and it needs to pull. So for starters I'll need to move this lever part facing down so I can pull forward to apply the brake, because the way it is now I would have to pull backwards and it's at the back of the car. So that's pretty simple. I don't have any more fancy bronze levers, but I have this one that came off of the riding mower, and I think if the steel part was painted black it would look okay. So I'm kind of picturing it right here in the corner, bottom corner, where you pull up and somehow it needs to stay up. It needs to lock into position. But for starters, let's move this lever around to the bottom. I got a piece of steel welded on there in the down position. I need to heat it and twist it a little bit because it's not quite, it's going with this piece, it's not straight with the front of the cart. Cut it to length and drill a hole for whatever kind of connecting rod that I find in my grab bag. I got some space problems. Putting it straight down, if I put a rod to the front, it's going to conflict with that pillar block bearing. I think I'm going to take it off and try to just bend it out some and see what that'll do. I think that's going to give me enough clearance. I'm going to take it off and drill a hole for this little piece. So this is the rod I'm going to use for pulling, and trim this little corner off a little bit to give me some clearance. I mean, the brake's on now, but it could be a little tighter. We've got a spring to pull it back. It's a tad long. I'm going to have to see if I can't cut it and make this spring work. So to modify this spring, I put the part I wanted to keep springy in the vise where the torch wouldn't get to it, and I heated it up and let it cool down, and that kind of anneals it a little bit so you can work with the spring metal without it snapping. So bent it around and got a pretty good looking spring. So let's try it out. So making two pivots for the parking brake shaft. I'm doing them just like I did the other one. I drilled a nut out so it fits in there pretty snug. And the way I got this dimension from the plywood bulkhead to the edge of the hole was I slid the nut on the shaft and then put the shaft in the hole, and then I used different pieces of steel to slide behind the nut until the shaft was straight in the hole, because it's really hard to see. But I ended up with this piece of, if I put this piece of steel between the nut and the plywood wall, then the shaft was straight with the back of the plywood. So this was the offset, and that's how I set the nut in relation to the bolting flange on this little piece of angle. So now I'm going to chop them up. This is 2 of them. I'm going to slide them in there and see if I can't figure out how to drill the holes in the right spot. Okay, so the shaft is in place. I ended up taking off the seat, which made it a lot easier. This linkage here is not tacked to the shaft yet. I'm guessing that it's in the right place. I don't know how to check it without welding it. I have the linkages here overlapped, so I can I have some adjustment there. I could cut that tack pretty easily and move them. And there's adjustment here. The linkage ties into the brake lever, and the brake is adjustable somewhat, so I don't know what else to do except put a tack on it and give it a shot. So I did a test run with the engine running, and the parking brake worked, but it doesn't get tight enough, which means I think my only option is to move this hole further out so I have a longer stroke, or cut this loose and put some sort of spacer in there. But either way, I have to take it off, I think. Dang it. Okay, boys and girls, I think I got it. I didn't actually move the hole. I cut this piece of iron and put another piece in the middle and stretched it out a little bit. And then I tacked one, 2 more of the nuts on the shaft. That keeps it from sliding left or right. And put the seat back in, give it a shot, give it a... So it's kind of hard to see, but the arm that heads toward the engine room, I bent it up, and that allows it to go over center. So when you pull the brake lever, it gets to a point at maximum pull, and then it goes a little bit further, it lightens up, and that allows the knob to the brake lever to stay engaged. Just that little bitty bend makes a big difference. So we have parking brakes. They're complete. They work. Pretty happy about all this.